Welcome to What is Check-in, Check-out, a webinar brought to you by Nebraska MTSS. My name is Mackenzie Rydell, and I am a social emotional behavioral learning specialist with Nebraska MTSS. Our learning objective is to define check-in, check-out and provide you with an overview of the evidence-based intervention. Lindsay Ann Learning states that teacher-student relationships are the single most important way to transform classroom climate and build a platform for student engagement. This is a great quote to resemble the why behind check-in, check-out. Check-in, check-out is an evidence-based practice for Tier 2 targeted supports. You can find additional information and research about check-in, check-out on our NEMTSS program comparison tool. So why check-in, check-out? Research suggests that implementing check-in, check-out leads to positive outcomes such as increased adherence to behavior expectations, reduced office discipline referrals, and decreased rates of mild, low-level disruptive behaviors. Research also suggests that check-in, check-out may result in increased academic engagement and prosocial behaviors. Check-in, check-out helps provide structure in a student's day. It helps create accountability as well as promote internal motivation. When we think about social, emotional, behavioral specific skills, check-in, check-out can really help support improvements in those skill areas, all while helping build relationships, improve attendance, and provide an increased sense of belonging. This intervention can also increase academic success. It can help create a stronger homeschool connection, and it aids in providing teacher feedback to both students and caregivers. Check-in, check-out is an extension of Tier 1 core supports, and it is a targeted intervention for some students. It requires low effort with high reward, extending opportunities to practice with increased teacher feedback. It is providing positive and specific responses to desired behavior. This intervention is consistent for all students, and it's a way for adults to be prompted to build positive relationships with their students. It's important to note here that the daily progress report that goes along with check-in, check-out is only a progress monitoring tool, not the intervention. What are some critical features of check-in, check-out? Like I mentioned before, check-in, check-out is a data-based Tier 2 intervention. It includes a beginning and end of day check-in with a positive adult. This might also be a check-in in each class period for some students, and the contact is intentional and provides that positive interaction and increased performance feedback throughout the day. Another critical feature is that it's easy to start the intervention and complete the intervention. When setting up a check-in, check-out system, you want to ensure to have clearly defined standard protocol for students entering and exiting the intervention. This allows for minimal effort for the adults and maximum benefit for the students. We want to ensure that it's consistent with the school-wide expectations. You want to have a system to monitor that continuous improvement and to identify that the intervention is implemented uniformly by all staff. Check-in, check-out might be appropriate for students who show those emerging or low-level concerns and display the concerns across multiple environments. Students may meet established decision rule criteria, and they may benefit from that increased adult interaction, require support for academic engagement, and need targeted social, emotional, and behavioral skills. The intervention works especially well for students who are seeking adult or peer attention. An important reminder is that check-in, check-out is not just for students who meet the decision criteria based on their behavioral data. We want to also be looking at things like academic behavior, academic data, and attendance data. We might be looking at students who struggle with those Tier 1 goals and behaviors, such as completing little to no classwork, not participating in the classroom, having difficulty with organizational or time management skills, and students who may need a little extra support managing their emotions, focus, attentiveness, or staying on task. This intervention can also be particularly effective for students during transition ages. If you're just rolling out this intervention, it could be beneficial to focus on a target population on your campus. So who is check-in, check-out not for? Remember that check-in, check-out is intended to be a low-level intervention. Therefore, check-in, check-out is not appropriate for students who are engaging in serious or violent behaviors, who experience high intensity or frequency of behaviors, like 8 or 10 behavior referrals, and who have persistently low academic achievement. It may not be appropriate for students who are escaping difficult academic tasks, are chronically absent, or who require more individualized support, like a functional behavioral assessment or a behavior intervention plan or wraparound services. Students with high-level needs may still benefit from additional structure and feedback, but they will likely need more intensive individualized support that check-in, check-out does not provide. When identifying someone for the coordinator role of check-in, check-out, it is important that the staff member is someone who has time and organizational skills to take the role on. Coordinators typically participate in Tier 2 meetings. They also have other duties, including managing a request for assistance, orienting new students to the check-in, check-out process, and introducing parents and teachers to check-in, check-out. They also communicate with the facilitators and create graphs and summarize the data for the Tier 2 meetings. At meetings, the coordinators are called on to provide updates on the intervention system as a whole and provide a summary of check-in, check-out student data. Coordinators help the team to identify trends in the data and make decisions on continuing or fading the intervention in accordance with the data. Here we want to touch on the role of facilitators or mentors in check-in, check-out. The check-in, check-out facilitator or mentor is at the heart of the intervention and can truly be any adult in a school building. Facilitators or mentors organize and maintain the records and track the success rates for individual students receiving the intervention. The most important aspect of the intervention is in the facilitators building a relationship with the student. This is done with the daily check-in and check-out. The check-in and check-out are typically done at the beginning and end of the day, but this process can be adapted to meet the needs of students and the school schedule. It is important that the facilitator maintain the daily progress report and be sure to connect, recognize, and reinforce the student for their efforts. Facilitators may also communicate progress to the building coordinator if there is one identified. Now let's touch on the teacher's role. Tier 2 interventions require staff to do a little bit more of the things they already do. In the case of check-in, check-out, the more of what is being done is providing feedback to students. Because check-in, check-out is the first line of Tier 2 support, it is intended to be low effort and low intensity. The heart of the teacher role in check-in, check-out implementation is connecting and providing feedback to students. Teachers also complete the daily progress report throughout the day, which provides data for teams to determine if the intervention is leading to positive results. This is a helpful visual to reference that explains the check-in, check-out implementation process. Just a reminder, when you see DPR on this visual, that stands for Daily Progress Report. When a student meets criteria for the intervention, you will use the Daily Progress Report to assess how the student is responding to the intervention. As you can see on the right hand of the visual, the check-in, check-out coordinator summarizes the DPR data and uses it for decision-making. The check-in, check-out data is ideally summarized and shared in meetings discussing Tier 2 intervention systems bi-weekly or monthly. A typical day for a student receiving targeted support with check-in, check-out would begin with a morning check-in with their identified facilitator or mentor. Throughout the day, the student would receive increased positive and specific feedback from teachers and other staff members, and then they have an afternoon checkout with our identified facilitator or mentor. The facilitator and mentor would share the progress monitoring data with the check-in, check-out coordinator, as well as with families and caregivers. As you saw in the last visual, we want to have open communication and collaboration and support families and caregivers in providing encouragement and feedback at home as well. To review, we defined check-in, check-out and provided you with an overview of the evidence-based intervention. Here we have provided some additional resources around check-in, check-out, including a short recording specific to secondary adaptations for check-in, check-out. Nebraska MTSS also offers check-in, check-out training and implementation support. If you have any questions or would like additional information or implementation support, please do not hesitate to contact your NEMTSS regional support team. You can find contact information at the link shown here. Thank you, and be sure to reach out with any questions.